Here, welcome everyone. In this short session, I'm going to talk about the real changes of the programming from the traditional programming that we developers have been doing. If you are new to .NET, let me tell you a lot of changes that you can see in coding style, in development methodology, and also in the web platform. To start with, let me tell you a few things. There has been a lot of changes in the pattern of coding. From a very traditional loop-based programming, we have been using loops, right, quite often, for loops, conditionals, and all these things in a traditional way. And these things are still there. Just a second, let me increase the font of the, yeah, it's fine now. So just from the beginning of loops and conditionals and all these things which you have been familiar with, but now with the advent of modern C# programming, things have pretty much changed or evolved. You will be seeing a lot of Lambda expressions. Okay, a lot of Lambda expressions, a lot of link statements sometimes also, and use of extension functions, extension methods, and the programming style in general have already changed. We have extensive use of anonymous functions. We have a lot of code changes. The pattern of coding is not the same. Okay, and for web, let me tell you, things have also changed. If you have been going through a traditional ASP, old ASP web forms technology, things have really changed. From that traditional style, we switched to MVC pattern, which really has a very definitive pattern of programming. MVC stands for Model View Controller. And now with more modern advent of .NET Core technology, .NET Core, MVC has got a new shape. So right now, as of now, at this time of recording, the most common aspects of .NET is using .NET Core, use that with MVC, and use all the very modern C# constructs. Okay, you know, even the smallest of small C# constructs will look little strange to you. We have very extensive use of asynchronous function. We call it async and await keyword. Async and await keywords. So that means a C# code can be found interspersed with a few things. I'm just pointing it down just for your notice so that we can have a deep dive on all of these things. Number one, starting from .NET 2.0, we have been using things like generics. Generics is a very old concept. It was there with C++ programming in form of templates. But of late, C# started with the concept of generics from version 2.0. Prior to that, generics was not there. Generics makes use a common class reusable for different types. So that means you can write a class code once and implement that for many types. The example of using generics will be this: list of integer, LST equals to new list of integer. Okay, now that means you got a list of integer elements. You can add innumerable number of integers inside this box. You can add that by writing very simple code. that list dot add. You can add 78. You can add lst dot add 34. The list is endless. You can go on adding as many as possible. So for those who are very new to .NET, you can expect to see a list class being implemented more often than not instead of being arrays, because arrays is having a size limitation. So that was generic in very short. You can replace this int by any data type you want. You can have list of double. In that case, it will be list of double over here also. You can have list of string, you can have list of even your custom objects. Say for example, you have got an employee class. So you also have list of employee. So that means you can have list of anything. That is why we call the list as a generic class. That is, you can have it implementing list of just about anything. So generics is one of the finest introduction to .NET starting from .NET 2.0. And then came the concept of extension functions. So number 2 is the concept of extension functions. Okay. So number 1 is generics. Number 2 is extension functions or extension methods. Okay. Now what exactly extension methods are? In short, extension methods inject new methods inside a class. So that means if you have a class and if you don't have access to the class, okay, say for example some person has written a class and you don't have access to it, don't have access to the class. If you don't have access to a class and also you are using that class quite often than not, for example, you have a string class in .NET. Now string class has been created by Microsoft. You don't have access to that class in any way, and neither this class lets you to extend itself, that is to inherit itself, so that you can add a few methods into it. So if a class is not accessible by you, not accessible to you, neither the class can be extensible, means inheritable, but still you need to plug in a few methods into it. For some reason, you can make use of the concept of extension methods. So extension methods are basically a very cool feature in .NET which lets you to plug in some methods inside an already developed class without inheritance. Okay, I don't write all these things so that you don't get confused. So just only this much. Plug in some extra methods inside an already developed class which is inaccessible to you. Which is, let me increase it, okay, which is inaccessible to you. Well, so that was the main funda of extension functions. So it extends the functionality of a class. Okay, so it is a very good concept. Just I am summarizing the topics. It's not about discussing them in details. Just I am summarizing the things. Number 3, which is used more often than not, is use of delegates. Use of delegates very often. Delegates are basically very sophisticated function pointers. Okay, so that means you are using a function to schedule it to call later. That is, you are taking a function as a variable and you let that function to be called later. Okay, so much not will be clear to you right now. All I can tell you is a delegate is a function prototype. Okay, it's a function prototype. I already have a video on delegates on YouTube. You can, if you want, you can just watch that. So it's a function prototype found in .NET. So it's basically an object-oriented function prototypes, and this has got an immense implementation. And the point number 4 that I'm going to write is just coming from the use of delegates. So if you don't understand delegates, point number 4 will not be clear to you, and point number 4 is so much used, right? Let me tell you what that is. That is lambdas or lambda expression. Okay, so what a lambda expression is, as I just started you by telling that things have shortened up. We don't write traditional loops and all these things so much of time. Lambda expression is quite a critical concept, but the most easy thing to use without understanding. Let me tell you, most of the people, almost 90% of the people, really don't understand in details what a lambda expression is. But they will use it like anything because it is so easy to use. You don't have to understand much, and trust me, I can tell you the use of lambda expression right now. In fact, I'm going to give you a very short example of lambda expression in C#. Now, lambda expression sometimes is also written in a very easy language known as comprehensive query syntax. This is basically lambda expression syntax. Okay, I'll call it syntax. And another one is comprehensive query syntax that follows link, L-I-N-Q. Links are very simple statements. Let me tell you, links are so interesting that you can use this link to query even in-memory data store like array, like list objects, using very simple language integrated queries. In fact, I'm going to show you these 4 and 5 as of now. Okay, so it is something like using SQL like statements, to query your in-memory data store. This is so easy. You can think this is an easy version of lambda expression, and this is not exactly easy. It is wrong to say it's easy, but a simplified version where the things are much English-like statement, but internally all the link statements gets boiled down to a lambda expression statement. Okay, so whether you write using link or lambda, even a hybrid approach is also available. You can use link interspersed with lambda expressions. So link and lambdas are so much of choice to developers, and all of these two things is using delegates. And the number 6 thing, you'll find this quite often, and you'll find irritated if you don't understand it properly, which is asynchronous programming using async, as I've told you, using these two things, async and await keywords. Okay, started by telling async and await, right? So you can use async and await keywords all the time right here. So let me, yes, I just already have it here. Control X, yeah. Using async and await keywords, it basically is telling that if you have a task which is long, which takes some time, don't take that task in the normal main thread. you put the task in a separate thread. So it's basically using of threading. If you're not sure about use of threading, don't worry. Threads are basically a unique compartment of execution unit. So that means you can let an execution spawn up to a different direction, and you can let two codes run parallelly. Okay, so instead of synchronous operations, which can take like, okay, let me have the task 1 complete, and then we'll have task 2 starting, and after that let's have task 3 starting. So task 1, task 2 and task 3, they are synchronous. So once one task completes, you can start with the next task. But with asynchronous programming, things will be like this. If task 2 and task 3 are not related with the working of task 1, so while you have started with task 1, we can start with task 2 and task 3 parallelly. So async and await basically takes advantage of a great thing in .NET. We call it TPL library, TPL, which is known as Task Parallel library. Okay. This task parallel library is basically a parallel library which can be used to go for an asynchronous type of coding. You can use async and await keywords to have the task 1, task 2, task 3 go in sequence. Okay, so that means the task parallel library is so much essential that you can make use of it, and you can have a synchronous version of your coding. You can let a big task to get into a different thread. So it is very interesting, and it is sometimes unavoidable to use TPL libraries. Okay, I have seen these days that even in the .NET Core, in the simplest of action methods, they're using task parallel library, async and await methods. So all the things that I've told you, point number 1, generics, point number 2, extension methods, point number 3, delegates, point number 4, Lambda expression syntax, point number 5, link statements, point number 6, task parallel library. All these things are very, very important. They are new advancement of C# language itself. So all I can tell you is that if you master all these things, you'll be feeling very comfortable with .NET. So let me go to Visual Studio and let me show you a very simple project where I can be showing you the use of Lambda expressions. Let me go for a console application in C#. Let me click OK to accept my defaults. Well, let me have a very simple array, an array of integers. Let me have a static initialized array of many elements. Okay. Now what I want from this array, okay, this is an array, right? And the thing that I want is to create a sub-array to create a subarray which will in which all the elements will be more than say 20. Okay, so that means it will be excluding 12, it will be excluding 19, it will be even excluding 20 because I told more than 20. So all the elements which are more than 20 will be taken inside a subarray or a sublist. For a simple developer, for a normal developer, he'll think, okay, let us first create an array with some size, say some fixed size, and then let us compare all the elements of the array. If they are more than some number, some predefined number, that data will be taken straight inside that second array. But things have really changed. Okay, let me show you how exactly that thing can be done using a very simplified Lambda expression syntax. First, let's start with the var keyword. Var result equals, I'm just writing the way normal developers write. Okay, as I've told you that Lambda expression syntax can easily be done, easily be followed by anyone without even understanding what is working under the hood. So I'll just write arr dot where, see, then all the numbers such that numbers is greater than 20. And it is done. Let me tell you, it is done. If you move the mouse cursor over rest, it says an I enumerable of rest. You don't understand what exactly I enumerable is. Something use of interface, an abstract class. And I'll tell you that these things are quite new to .NET. However, the general object-oriented concepts will have to be mastered equally well. That means you should be understanding polymorphism, interfaces, object-oriented design pattern. All these things must be very well with you. Without that, you cannot proceed with any object-oriented system, whether that can be C#, whether that can be Java, whether that can be even Angular, because Angular is using TypeScript, and TypeScript is totally object-oriented, having dependency injection and lot of stuff. So the first thing of your career should be to have a concrete understanding of object-oriented principles. So first you must master object-oriented concepts. Okay, so this is the first choice. You must understand object-oriented concepts and also its implementation. So that we call it like object-oriented design pattern. You can highlight this word, is object-oriented design pattern. Okay, is object-oriented design pattern. This is something that you really need to understand in depth, in details. There are a lot of design patterns. When I tell design patterns to be right, there are a lot of design patterns which is very common to all object-oriented systems. Fine. So make sure that you really understand these things very, very well. And with our live training, of course, I make a special emphasis on object-oriented design patterns. Before even we go to specifics of modern programming, but before that you must understand the design pattern very well, because that integrates into the modern programming very well. Okay, so that means you should be very much clear with the concepts of interfaces, use of static keyword in C#, and use of abstract class. Okay, use of abstract class, right? So these are the things that you should be equally okay with, right? So interfaces, statics, and abstract class basically encompasses many of the interesting things in modern programming, not just with C#. Okay, And then these 6 topics are so much of importance. You must understand them in details. And now I'm telling you how easy to use lambda expression. You are using a very simple if-like statement. If I tell you what this is a lambda expression. And once you write it, you are getting all the things right inside that result. So all I can write is that a simple for each loop. For each, tab tab, that is a shortcut in Visual Studio. Tab tab will be creating the code snippet for you. For each item in result, well, let me type CW tab tab. That brings up console at right line. So interesting, those Visual Studio shortcuts, item, and you will be seeing all the items inside that res. So this res is a sub array out of that main array, which stores all the essential data that satisfies this condition. So here we go. Okay, before that, let me stop my antivirus because it will stop any exe to be running. That's fine. Let me write console dot read a key. Wonderful. Run it by pressing F5 and you will be seeing all the elements which are more than 20. You see the results: 45, 80, 45 again, 67, 34 and 45. I had an affinity for 45. Maybe I wrote 45 for 3 times, whatever. So now you see that so simple syntax instead of such a complex writing for loops, creating another array, allocating memory to it. You can really find the difference. If you think how to create a sub array out of a main array, satisfying a condition, you have to write a few bits of computer code, right? But you see that is solved with one line. There is another alternative to this. Instead of writing it this way, you can write by writing var res equals to from num in ARR, where num is greater than 20, select num. Wonderful, man. You see how beautiful is this thing. So what it suggests you is that this is just a very simple syntax. This is basically linked syntax, okay? So LINQ. That means language integrated query. So it's a querying mechanism just sitting inside C# itself. It has code highlighting, it can have IntelliSense, everything. That means using link statements, you can just have a very simple looking code which can query an in-memory data store. Let me tell you one interesting point is that whatever you write in link is actually getting boiled down to a comprehensive query syntax, which is lambda expression syntax, okay? Sorry, this is basically comprehensive query syntax and this is lambda expression syntax. So every link will be getting boiled down to the statement like this internally. But you can write an English-like statement, the thing that I've told you, right? So link statements are like English-like statements. They are SQL-like statements. If you have done some SQL, you know that what SQL is. In SQL, you start the select clause in the beginning, but in link, we have it in the down. For those who are wondering what is that var, let me tell you, var is telling that, oh, well, Mr. .NET, I don't know the data type. You figure it out. You figure that out. So just a short example what var is. See if I write var y equals to 8, right? Now if you move mouse cursor over y, it will tell you int y. So that means var is telling I don't know what type of data y is. Let me give you some data and then you understand what type of data it is. So it's totally a compile time stuff. It's not a runtime stuff. It just tells the compiler that, okay, I give you data and you figure out what data type it should be. Quite interesting. It's not difficult at all to understand and follow these things. So I just briefed you all the concepts of C# that will be essential and good to know things in long run. I hope if you come to our training center or if you take the training online, I'll have the privilege to teach you all these concepts in details, in depth, to your satisfaction, right? So these are just C# concepts, and for MVC concepts, I may create another video like what MVC concepts you must want to learn. But those who are learning MVC must definitely learn those C# concepts too, right? May not be in depth, but to some extent, so that they can be using those concepts in MVC as often as possible. That's what it is. Thank you for being in this session. Take care. Bye-bye. Hope to listen from you. If you have got any question, anything, please drop a comment in the comment box below. And if you really want to take a training from us, just drop a message also, either in my email, which is written in the site below, which is supernova.software.solutions@gmail.com, and can contact me. I'll be more than happy to reply you. Take care. Bye-bye.